Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Monday edition of the show. Want to welcome all the Pewter people that are just filing into the chat and the comments. Hope everybody had a fantabulous weekend. Yes, that's fantastic and fabulous all in one. As we approach the eve of minicamp. Now, I'm not going to say this is like Christmas Eve because that would probably be like the night before the start of the regular season. Maybe it's a little bit more like a New Year's Eve type of thing because some people love New Year's Eve. Other people hate New Year's Eve and think it's overrated. There's going to be practice for the Bucs, which is fantastic, but no physicality, so we got to take it with a grain of salt. We're going to break it all down, talk about your favorite team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, on today's show. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague at pewterreport.com, one of the best people I know, Josh Capo. Josh, thank you so much for joining once again after your tremendous performance, talking with Bucs assistant GM Mike Greenberg. Thanks for joining us, and how you doing?
I'm doing great, Matt. I appreciate the intro as always. You are the world's greatest hype man. And I'm excited to be on here. So this is like 2 podcasts for me inside of a week, which outside of like in season is unheard of for me. So I'm super stoked.
Yeah, and technically 2 in a row because it was Thursday and then Monday.
Right.
So yeah,
I got a streak going.
You have, move over. Was it DiMaggio with the hitting streak?
Cal Rip. Well, okay, the hitting streak. I was thinking.
Cal Ripken. Yeah, Cal Ripken's better.
Played.
We don't like the stinkies anyway, so yeah, we'll do Cal Ripken. Like I said before, shout out to everybody in the chats. You're like who's that punter on the Giants that he like broke the consecutive games played? I think it was Jeff Fiegels. And he broke the consecutive games record. Everyone's like, this is BS. He's a punter. Like, he doesn't get hit. Like, all these things. And it became, like, such a big deal.
Accomplishing something and people yelling, this is BS, it shouldn't count. It's a perfect reference.
But on the flip side, nobody is a bigger supporter of punters than you. So, if anything, if you're going to be following the footsteps.
Shout out Punt Runts on Twitter.
Yeah.
So, I love them.
Anyway, looks like we got some people that don't typically get to watch us live because we do go live at 4:00. But that's the beauty of YouTube and Spotify and everywhere you can find us on our podcast that you can listen to us at a later date. But it's always fun, especially on Mondays when we have roll call, to join us live. So shout out to Joshua Shaw, who says, finally got the live show. LOL. That's what we're talking about.
Name Joshua.
Yeah. The elitist of the elite. Last night, I was hanging out with a buddy of mine, another Joshua, friend of mine from school that was visiting in town from UT. Go Spartans. Also, I know I'm going all over the place here. Shout out University of Tampa Spartans, baseball national champions. So
nice.
Dynasty.
Cool.
And Drake Westfall as well saying, I'm late, but I'm here. Awesome. Better late than never, as Drake once said. But I guess maybe Kendrick won the rap beef, so maybe we should be quoting Kendrick.
Yeah. When I'm hearing about it, it's pretty big. And I actually got to listen to Kendrick's and Drake's. And I definitely think Kendrick won with my completely uninformed opinion.
Hey, it's valid for sure. Well, we'll put that. I'm writing that down now.
That Kendrick, Stockton line was fire.
Yeah. Kendrick won. 0. Yeah, you can see that. All right, so the Bucs are going to be playing from this one's a good one too. Paul, aka Florida Dreamhouse, says more Josh Capo and less Traskaholic talk is always a plus.
Paul's an awesome follower. I love Paul.
Paul is the man. Born in Italy too, or his family was born in Italy. I thought that was very cool and a fun fact. But let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have mini camp coming up tomorrow, and I want to start with this because, like I said before, there's going to be a couple things we could take away from mini camp for sure. What we can see about Liam Cohen's offense. How does like Jalen McMillan look? At this level, especially with all the starters on defense playing. But I want to start with kind of a more larger view. Going into this season, Josh, I were to ask you, which I'm about to, if you are more comfortable with the Bucs offense or the Bucs defense going into the regular season, who would you say you're more comfortable with?
Defense.
Okay, that's what I said too.
Yeah. You got some question marks on the interior of the offensive line. Baker has been a high variance quarterback up until this point in his career. Brand new offensive coordinator installing a familiar system. The run game last year was not good. And again, all of these things, there are positive outcomes that are, potential outcomes, but none of it, I think, is a guarantee. So I think all of that leaves you with more questions on the offense. When you look at the defense, yes, you don't have that number one edge rusher, but Todd Bowles has proven year in, year out that he can scheme around that, and he's still going to be, there's a good chance the Bucs will still end up as one of the top 10 teams in sacks in the upcoming year, even without that, because they do have a high floor with a lot of guys. Plus, I think Elijah Cansey's going to take another step this year and give them a little bit more consistency from the interior. You have Levante coming back. You have Antoine coming back, and he's going to have a better running mate in Jordan Whitehead. And I've been watching a lot of Zion McCollum film, and I'm very, very hopeful for what he's going to turn into here in year 3, maybe a little bit more so than what the left guard spot looks like on the offense. So all of that, plus a defensive-minded head coach who's going to most likely keep that side of the ball looking pretty good. I would say I'm more optimistic about the defense. And I just think the offense has more high variance outcomes potentially out there.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you for a number of the things that you said, starting with just really, I think the Bucs kind of shored up a lot of the questions that you may have had about the defense right when the season ended after they lost to Detroit. The biggest factor being, as you kind of said, with Antoine Winfield Jr., who we know is fantastic and is an all-pro player, but having that running mate next to him, as you said, with Jordan Whitehead, I think that is a gigantic difference. I think kind of shoring up the depth at cornerback, because yes, it was Carlton and Jamel last year, but I think a lot of us are in agreement. We just, to me, in my eyes, like Zion was just a starter just based on like the consecutive weeks that he had to play. But it was like, well, if something happened to Zion, then you're kind of down to like D. Delaney and a lot of like unsure guys where now, yeah, you're kind of still back to that rotation of 3 with now Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum, but Bryce Hall is a guy that has started. He's been a backup to very talented corners in New York with the Jets, so you feel pretty good about him if he does have to play for a significant extended period of time. And then really outside linebacker, my thoughts on it is, yeah, like if Yaya's on one side, that's great. There is an ensemble cast. Like this is like watching Ocean's 11 or something like that with all of the outside linebackers that the Bucs have. I just feel like one of them has to pan out, whether it's like a rotation of Randy Gregory, JTS, Anthony Nelson, or Braswell. Obviously, a second round pick, that's an important draft pick. Like that's a guy who they expect to be a future starter. Or who knows if Marquise Watts or Jose Ramirez kind of steps up or impresses, or maybe at this point doesn't come out of nowhere, because we were talking about Marquise Watts last year. But there's so many answered questions on the Bucs defensively that, yeah, the offense, to your point, is just like, well, will the running game figure itself out because of the interior offensive line? Are we putting too much stock into Grant Bard and what he can do? There's still a lot of uncertainty about the Bucs offense, where overall, if you're looking big picture of the Bucs offense, you feel good about it, but not as assured as really what the defense brings.
Right. I think with, I think similar things with like Graham Barton at center as what you're talking about in terms of like the outside linebacker position. With both of those, the Bucs have created a potential solution with higher upside than what they had last year and haven't really given up much of the floor. Shaq Barrett probably had a higher floor than the combination of Chris Braswell and Randy Gregory, but he didn't have, at this point in his career, he doesn't have the upside of what those two could bring.
Yeah.
I think the same thing can be said about Barton with Robert Hainsey. But the cool thing is Hainsey still is backup. So if Barton doesn't pan out, there is the option to go to Hainsey at some point. But again, that left guard spot, like Sua Opeta and Ben Bredesen, to this point in their career, neither one has proven to be a starting option in the NFL. Both solidly decent backups. I may be putting a little bit of fairy dust on that one. And at this point, it's the two of them kind of competing for that left guard spot. Maybe Robert Hainsey factors into it with Bredesen having some positional flexibility that he could kick to the backup center position. But overall, that's kind of the weakest link on the roster, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And offensive line is a weak link system. If you have a really weak link, it can spell disaster. Bucs fans know that all too well from 2022 with Luke Gedeke at left guard.
Yeah, and teams will just continue to attack it and attack it and attack it because there's only so many ways that you can stop it outside of like, okay, we have to put in someone else. Like you can't, you can only double team so many times and depending on the play. Let me ask you about, you mentioned Opeta and Bredesen a moment ago. Do you view their additions to the team and obviously competition at left guard, is it on the same level of Matt Filer and Aaron Stinney last year, or do you view it as like a little bit of an upgrade, maybe a little bit of a downgrade? How do you necessarily see that?
I'd say downgrade. Downgrade? Yeah, Filer had a much better track record than any of the three others headed into the season. I know Matt Filer is persona non grata around Bucs Park, but if you look at it, he had one horrendous half of football when he was injured against the Falcons and he ended up, being out for a few games and then eventually losing his starting spot to Aaron Stinney. I think he's played at a higher level in his career than either Opeta or Bredesen. I think Stinney's play last year was better than anything Opeta and Bredesen have produced to this point. Now, could either one of them step up and be a competent guard? There's a non-zero chance of it. I just wouldn't make that chance like above 40%. Like I think it's more likely not than it is.
So sticking with that offensive line, the last thing I'll ask about that position specifically, and something we've kind of talked about on the show before, or at least something to ponder, not Christian ponder, but something just to ponder. So Robert Hainsey in the mix here, obviously, the Bucs have said we view Graham Barton as a center. Odds are that he's going to be the starting center with obviously Malk lining up at right guard next to him. Would it be the worst idea to put Hainsey in the mix at the left guard position with the understanding of, well, if he doesn't win the position, then he's just the backup center. And you feel good about him as a backup center. But if Opeta and Bredesen aren't up to snuff, really, why not throw Hainsey into the mix and just, if anything, the worst case scenario is that it pushes everybody else.
Yeah, I'm on record as saying for 2024, the best starting five includes Robert Hainsey. Okay. I would probably keep Hainsey at the pivot because I have concerns about his play strength and those get exasperated at guard. And I think Barton's got better play strength than him. So for me, ideally, without having seen them at minicamp starting tomorrow or anything like that, kind of headed in, if I were designing a starting five, it'd be from left to right, Wirfs, Barton, Hainsey, Malk, Gedeke. That's how I would kind of line it up with Opeta as the backup guard, Bredesen as the backup center, and then obviously you got Brandon Walton, you got Justin School as the backup tackles.
Yeah, I like that lineup. I'd be all for it because you're not going to find many teams that just have studs at all over the offensive line, but I think the Bucs are kind of on their way, man. I mean, Tristan, we know, is a sure thing. Luke Gedeke, with what he did last year, if he continues to progress the way that we think and hope he is, I'm not saying he's going to be the next Tristan Wirfs, but he's going to be pretty damn good.
Pro Football Focus had him as one of their top 32 tackles in the entire NFL.
Yeah.
Now that's looking at left and right tackles, and I think he ranked somewhere around 20th overall. So he's one of the 20 best tackles, according to them, headed into the 2024 season. That turnaround from the worst guard in football in 2022 is, we talk about it all the time, and we probably are still not talking about it enough.
Yeah, that's very true. And sadly, that's sometimes the nature of the offensive line, is that you don't talk about it. Like, I don't know, this would be like if Russell Gage was still on the team this year and had like 1,000 yards, 70 receptions, and 12 touchdowns, and it made a Pro Bowl or something like that.
Oh, buddy, my Twitter account would love that.
Hey, we got a $5 super chat, and also just real quick, Cody Mount. He looks big. Like, I saw him up close and personal. He has committed to that.
Put on the good weight.
Yeah, to put on the good weight for sure. So I'm excited about what he can do. But thank you to this $5 super chat from KGH4Life. We had some great chats, comments from everybody. But if you super chat us, you get to cut the line. We'll try to get to as many comments as we can. But if you do want to be heard and get your question off, then super chat us and we will get to it. So KGH4Life says, if Barton does not start at either center or guard, is it a failure? If by the end of his tenure with the Bucs, if he's not starting, then absolutely it's a failure. If he comes out of the gate struggling and the Bucs ultimately decide, hey, we're not going to start him right away, that was the plan, but it's not exactly how we see it best for the team right now. If he doesn't start his first year, his rookie year, but then goes on to start the rest of his Bucs career, the rest of his rookie contract, I think that's fine. Obviously, you'd be a little bummed about it, but if he ends up starting from year 2 on, I think that's okay. If he ends up starting and they bench him and things like that, then yeah, I think it would be a failure.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the track record for this team, I'd lay the odds that he's going to start week 1 at, barring injury, well over 97%.
Yeah.
That's just the way the Bucs operate. You know, all of their first and second round guards or offensive linemen have really started over the past, I would say, over Jason Light's entire career. Some people may point to Alex Kappa, who I think was in a timeshare his rookie year, but he was also 4th round pick, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're looking at the day 1, day 2 guys. Cody Mauch started right out of the gate. Hainsey was a 3rd round pick. He didn't start, but the 1st and 2nd round guys do. And you saw with Gedeke what happened. Like, he got way more chances than I think most people would have wanted him to get. Yeah. He was finally benched towards the end of the season. So he will be starting to start the season. Now, halfway through, if things are looking really bad, we've seen the Bucs aren't afraid to sit a guy like they did with Gedeke and wait for year 2 and say, how do we better improve this situation? So to answer the question, I think it would be, we really have to look at it in year 2, like the end of year 2. Yeah. What does he look like before we start saying, even start to talk about failure, right? So that's kind of how I would take it. I also think that Bucs fans have gotten spoiled with Tristan Wirfs in terms of their expectations for rookie offensive linemen.
1,000,000%.
Most rookie offensive linemen struggle year 1. There have been, Penei Sewell, who is now the highest paid offensive tackle in the NFL, the first half of his first season, when they had him at right tackle, or he initially started at right tackle there because he was a left tackle in college, he didn't look good. Towards the end of the year, he started to look better, and then since then, he's become one of the most dominant tackles in football. But most offensive linemen struggle year 1, and I think Bucs fans probably need to kind of get that into their radar, as just because he's struggling year 1 does not mean that he's going to be a bad draft pick. It's really year 2, year 3, year 4. Do you see improvements? Are they starting to become somebody who's at least average, and then can they build upon that?
No, that's a great point, Josh, because the whole, like, Tristan Wirfs and Anton Winfield Jr. to a degree as well has kind of ruined it for every future Bucs draft pick because they were so great at the start. It kind of reminds me, and we'll get to roll call momentarily, but it kind of reminds me, and this is a fishing story, so Mark Cook will appreciate it. The first time I ever went fishing, like with my family, when we went out on a boat, and it was just one of those days where you dropped your line and bam, a fish was coming up.
Oh, no, that's a terrible first one.
Everybody that was on the boat must have caught at least like 4 or 5 fish each. So I'm thinking like, wow, fishing is great. The next time I go out fishing, I don't think I caught anything. And I'm like, and you remember, I'm a kid. So I'm like, what's going on here? Like, why aren't I catching 1,000 fish like I was last time? That's essentially what I think sports fans and Bucs fans specifically sometimes may have experienced when, Gedeke wasn't fantastic out of the gate, or, some other people, even Cody Mapp, like, why wasn't he playing at a stud level like Tristan Wirfs was when Wirfs got drafted? It's so rare, but when it happens, it's amazing. And it's like embedded in your head for so long when you just see greatness like the fishing day I had, or Tristan Wirfs and Anton Winfield Jr.
It's really good analogy.
Yeah, thank you. Now we're going to get into a very fun moment. We're a couple of minutes late, but you know what? We're bad boys and we like to break the rules. So it's time for roll call. Where you at, Pewter people? We do this every Monday show around 4:20. Sometimes we're fashionably late. We love interacting with our fans, the Pewter people, as much as we possibly can. So this is one way that we do it that is always fun because we got great fans all over the world, really. So if you guys want to start putting the location in the chat where you are watching from, we'll put them up on the screen, like Felix Schmidt from Edmonton. Probably going to be going hard for the Oilers tonight, I would imagine. And while we do that, one of us typically goes on a rant or discussion about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Josh, today I would love to get your opinion, your thoughts about how the NFC South is shaking out, how it could potentially shake out this year with obviously the big moves that Atlanta has done, where the Bucs are at this moment, and your thoughts on that. So Josh, feel free to take it away whenever you're ready, as I will continue to put up the locations of everybody from where they're watching.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a rant, but I will definitely kind of discuss it. I think you're seeing 3 teams that have made significant strides to improve from their 2023 results. And then you see one team that's probably on the downside. So most Bucs fans will be happy to hear, in my estimation, that one team that's going in the reverse is the New Orleans Saints, who I think are probably the most hated team in the division from Bucs fans. Yeah. They continue. I know a lot of people say, why don't the Saints ever see the ramifications of pushing their cap into the future? But you really do see it. You see it around the edges. They lose good players every year because they can't afford them, because they've sunk so much future dollars into their stars. And with the Saints, their stars are aging. Alvin Kamara's, I want to say 30, Cam Jordan maybe 56 at this point. Derek Carr's body is breaking down like he's 92. So things aren't looking great for New Orleans. Then you look at the rest of the teams. I think Carolina may be one of the most improved teams in football. Now, they're starting from such a low point. I don't think that means that they're on the Bucs radar in terms of competing for a division title this year. But as many people who watch this podcast or follow Pewter Report know, I was a big Dave Canales supporter. I thought he's a brilliant offensive mind in terms of how he constructs his passing offense. And I do think that you're going to see several steps forward from Bryce Young, from the Panthers offense overall. They invested a lot of money into their offensive line for some average to above average guys, but that's a huge step forward from the offensive line they had last year. So whether it was a good use of money and they're going to get the best ROI on it, maybe not. But I do think that offensive line is going to be a lot better. I think Bryce Young's going to be better. They have a better receiving core than they did last year. So you're going to see an improved offense, which typically leads to improved results. The Falcons, I think they did a great job of investing in the one thing that really held them back last year. They have a much better quarterback, and arguably a top 10 quarterback, depending on the condition of Kirk Cousins' Achilles. If it's healed enough that he can, really kind of torque up and get into his throws, the Falcons are going to give the Bucs a run for their money in the NFC South. Yeah. And that's a good offense. They've got good playmakers. They've got really good coaching staff. I think Raheem Morris has been biding his time, and he's one of the smartest men in football. And the defense last year was pretty good. Now, they did lose their defensive coordinator, and I think that's going to cause them to take a big step back, and they still don't have a solid edge rush, but they've got a good interior rush, as the Bucs saw last year. That leads us to the Bucs. I think they did a really great job of looking at one of the weaknesses on their team last year and throwing a lot of resources at it, and that's the secondary. Yes, they lost Carlton Davis, but as I said earlier on this podcast, I think Zion McCollum is going to take another step forward and become a legitimate starting corner in the NFL this year. They were able to lock up Winfield long-term. You add Jordan Whitehead, the two of them have great chemistry. He's been very successful in this defense. He's been very successful in a different kind of defense and showed better coverage skills with New York in a too high system. And then you add to that Tyke Smith. Who is one of I think he was my favorite draft pick from the draft. I think he's going to win that nickel job. I think he's going to be a huge playmaker from there. And then we talked a little bit about the edge room. I think that there's more room for variance there, but there's more upside than there was last year with Braswell and Randy Gregory. So I think the defense is going to take a step forward, and I think the offense is going to maintain and potentially move forward if that left guard spot does not become a huge issue. So all of that to say, I think it's a 2-horse race at the top, whereas last year it was a 3-horse race at the top. The Saints were in it right up until the end there. And then you're going to see a huge improvement from Carolina and probably a step back from the Saints.
All fantastic points. I think Carolina goes from a team that was a complete, pushover. They had the first overall pick before they obviously traded it. They would have had the first overall pick for a reason. The Saints, man, and I'm full agreement. I think it's a 2-team race for the NFC South. The Saints, I just can't get a read on them. I don't know if you were on, but did you hear me make my Austin Powers reference to the Saints?
I do not recall that one.
Okay, but you're familiar with Austin Powers?
Yes.
Okay, so the second one, like right after Austin goes through the time machine and he's partying at his pad, and there's the woman there that like tries to get him killed, and then all the people are trying to get him killed, and he like uses her as a shield, and then they fall off the thing, and he's like, "Why won't you die?" That's the Saints to me, because we've had this conversation, Josh, for the last like 2 or 3 years of, the Saints are done, they have no money, their players are old, and then yet, by hook or by crook, they're still in it at the end. Now, they haven't made the playoffs, but, if the Bucs lost their last game of the regular season last year, the Saints are going to the playoffs. And it's just crazy to me, like, how, even though they look left for dead, I mean, Derek Carr, his body is being put together by duct tape to, like, let him play week in and week out. And yet the Saints are, like, still around. Obviously not a Super Bowl threat or a full force, but they're still around at the end, where it's like, why? And as Austin Powers said, why won't you die? Why are you still around? How are you doing this?
Same cinematic world. You could make the same analogy to Will Ferrell's character from Austin Powers, Mustafa. I think that was his name.
Where's Dr. Evil's lair? Where's Dr. Evil's lair? Where's Dr. Evil's lair?
So when Dr. Evil finally decides he's had enough of him and does the death chair, and Will Ferrell's yelling up from the bottom, he's like, I've fallen on these stakes. I'm very badly hurt, but I'm still alive. Then he hits him with like the incinerator.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been burned.
Oh, I'm badly burned. My one leg is broken. Let me see the other one. Oh, that one's broken too.
That's the Saints.
That is great too. And then the second one as well. Yeah, when he gets pushed over the pretty much the Grand Canyon or whatever they are. That's very true though. That's who the Saints are. They are Will Ferrell's character in Austin Powers. And I mean, everything you said is very valid about the Bucs and the Falcons too. So it'll make it a lot of fun. It also bothers me. I think this is good for the Bucs, but I don't think it's great for NFL fans in general. I hate that the Bucs and the Falcons play each other twice in the same month and in October too. Like, you gotta have one of those games in December or something.
Yeah, it'd be nice if that was like the week 18 matchup. So they had a late I want to say last year in Atlanta was a little bit later. It was the start of the
Yeah,
Bucs run,
it
if I
was.
remember correctly, to the postseason. So that was pretty cool playoff football. I got to be in attendance for that one, for the Bucs, because at that point they were basically fighting for their lives that last 6-7 weeks, and it started with Atlanta there.
Yeah, that win, great moment with Kate Otten scoring late. So a great time for those in attendance. And it's also a great time anytime you're having Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of the Pewter Report podcast. The vibes are always high on this show, even more high since we got Josh Capo on, and always enjoy chatting with him. So check out all the vibe flavors of Celsius, whether it's the Galaxy, Astro, or Cosmic. I love the Arctic vibe. That's my personal favorite, but there's a lot of great flavors of Celsius out there. There's no sugar. It's a great way to start your day as well. If you want to substitute for coffee, definitely gets you going. I know it gets me going as well. Might have one before mini camp tomorrow too. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, go to the Celsius store locator on their website. Punch in your address. It'll tell you the closest location. You could pick one up. Could be a Walmart, health and fitness store, or maybe could be your bodega.
Bodega.
Nicely done. Very, very nice.
Been practicing.
And once you keep going to your bodega and you know you love Celsius and you want more and you want to buy it in bulk, you can buy it in bulk. Go over to Amazon. I recommend getting that variety pack because you heard me rattle off a bunch of great flavors. They're all fantastic. And variety is the spice of life. So why limit yourself to one flavor of Celsius when, like Pokemon, you can catch them all? So go to Amazon, have it sent to your place of residence, and you can schedule when to order. It could be a week, month, whenever. You're the captain. You're in charge. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. Once again, we had a great turnout of everybody from roll call today. So appreciate everybody that participated. We're going to give a couple of special shout outs right now, starting with Jay Utu from Buckinghamshire in jolly old England in the UK. David Bruce from Colorado Springs. Shout out to Rado. Jeremy Corp saying, long-time listener, first-time live roll calling from Syracuse, New York. Shout out to Carmelo Anthony. That is awesome. So glad you could join us. Ghoul watching from Augusta, Georgia, where famously the Masters is. If you're a big golf fan, U.S. Open this week. Going to be a lot of fun.
Used to cover that territory.
Did you really?
Yeah. I used to have for my other job, I used to have a store in Augusta, Georgia. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tobias Stark representing Germany, so more international fans. Bucs Germany's in the house. Go Bucs. That's awesome to see. Thank you, Tobias, for your participation. B. Tyler, 562 from Long Beach, California, the hometown of Calvin Broadus. Josh, do you know who Calvin Broadus is?
I don't, but I've got something about Long Beach once you tell me who Calvin Broadus is.
Oh, well, he is none other than Snoop D-O-double-G, Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
What do you got about Long Beach?
That tracks. My daughter wants to live there when she grows up.
Very cool. There's also Long Beach, Long Island, where I was born. So
nice.
East Coast, West Coast. Yeah, Long Beach, fun area. I had a friend that lived over there in California as well, in Long Beach. So that's a bold spot to aspire to live in. But it's dope.
She wants to she wants to be a bit of a tumbleweed. She's like, she wants to get to the West Coast and kind of work her way down from San Francisco and eventually settle into Long Beach. So what goes through a 9-year-old's mind to figure all that out? I have no clue, but she's got the plan in place.
Yeah, there you go. It's good to have a plan. And last but certainly not least, Tanner James Gauff, celebrating my birthday in Monterey, California. I'm wishing to watch a game in Tampa for once. Tanner, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Hope you have a great, fantastic birthday. And hope all your hopes and dreams come true, which is going to see a Bucs game in Tampa.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Tanner. Matt, I do believe that's Monterey, California.
Yeah, I probably said it wrong. In Monterey, California. I mean, that's part of the glitz and glamour of the show.
I love it.
You get me looking like an idiot. So, but yeah, shout out to everybody. especially you, Tanner, the birthday person in Monterey, California. Let's get back to some Buccaneers discussion, shall we? Tobias actually had a question earlier on. I don't believe we got to, and then we'll talk about the offense as well. But this is with the cornerback position. Tobias is asking, do you guys have concerns about your cornerback 2 position? So I guess specifically Zion McCollum. Josh, you've kind of already been on the record, though. You are loving it, what you've seen from Zion McCollum. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of really good tape from him last year. So full disclosure, we'll get this out there for Scott Reynolds, who's been teasing me about this. I initially thought I was gonna do a Zion story about 3 weeks ago. I was gonna look at one game from early in the season, one game from in the middle of the season, one game late in the season, kind of see what was the progression in terms of his processes, what could we potentially expect for 2024. And as I got into it, I was like, you know what? Now I'm going to watch every game. So I'm in the process of watching every game. There were a couple of tough games for him. What I think a lot of people might be surprised to know is Houston wasn't actually that bad of a game for him on a snap-to-snap basis. I think he had 2 really bad plays, but overall, he wasn't that bad in Houston. And I think that with another year, especially after listening to him on our podcast last week, right? Some of the things that he's been working on, I think that he's going to kind of take another step and he's going to be a solid average or potentially even above cornerback this year. And what I really like that the Bucs did is they are hedging that bet, though, because I think Bryce Hall is a starting caliber cornerback in the NFL. Maybe not a high end, but certainly capable. Matt, you've seen him play a lot, being a Jets fan. I'm not sure what your opinions are on Bryce Hall, but I think between the two of them, I think the Bucs have a solid floor for that position.
Yeah, I feel really comfortable about the overall depth of the Buccaneers, and Bryce Hall is a big part of it. And I think, like, if I were going to bet on it, I would say Zion's going to win the starting job, and Bryce Hall will be cornerback 3, but ready to go in a pinch. And yeah, I mean, he is a solid corner that I think on several other teams in the league, he would probably be a starter. But the problem that he fell into, at least with the Jets, is that, well, obviously they were a bad team more for their offense than their defense, but because they had such a high draft pick, they went out and got Sauce Gardner, who obviously has lived up. Yeah, he's lived up to the billing, I think is fair. So when you have Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, it's not even like poor performances from Bryce. It's just you have elite level corners on that team. So, he's not perfect by any means. There are certain things in coverage that he can be better at. He's taken the ball away to a degree, but maybe not the ball hawk that I think people really would love to have on a team. But Bryce Hall, there's definitely a spot for him. You never know with injuries or anything like that, but there's always ways to kind of get your corners involved, whether by choice or not. So I think Bryce Hall is really going to push Zion. And I know we had Zion on the show, and I even said to Zion, I said, you're likely going to be the starter, but even you yourself, you want to earn it. You don't want it to just be given to you. So I don't know if it's the number one battle going into minicamp and more specifically training camp, but I think it's one that Bryce Hall is certainly going to push the envelope on. And I also will say I think is going to be a great fit in this locker room, because he immediately said, we spoke to him last week. I thought he was so insightful with a lot of his answers. It's one thing I asked him. I was like, Bryce, you're coming from two completely different defenses, like with what you were asked to do with the Jets, who rely a lot on their 4-man pass rush to get after the quarterback, and what Tampa Bay is going to ask you to do, where they blitz until the cows come home, and that obviously requires different things from the secondary as well if they're not blitzing their secondary. And I really like what he had to say there. Obviously, a lot of people want to know about his relationship with Zion. What's it like kind of beating a guy, but you're also competing with him at the same time? And he said, he's my guy. I don't view him as competition. I really only look at competition with myself. So I think he's just going to fit in really well. he's one of 5 brothers. I didn't know that. I thought that was pretty wild. He's like, yeah, it's just like going to the locker room is like just being with my brothers again. Like everyone kind of ripping on each other, but in harmless type of ways and things like that. So I know he's only on a 1-year deal, but I don't know. I hope Bryce Hall could be a mainstay for the Bucs, whether it's in a starting role or an important role on this team. But obviously, everyone's got to do what's best for them. Thanks to Paul, a.k.a. Florida Dreamhouse, for this $5 super chat. You the man, Paul, who says, how does Pewter Report Weekend Edition pod sound with a rotating crew of Josh Bailey and Sly, hosted by Matty Diamond sound? Fun energy with you two today. Make it so, SR. Paul, I appreciate the super chat. I appreciate the comment. We do. I mean, Josh and I are on a lot during the game day shows on Sundays, so you can get your weekend edition that type of way. And I always have a blast when Josh is on. I tend to giggle the most when Josh is on.
That is very much a mutual feeling there, buddy.
Which is a good thing. I don't say that in a negative way. As far as consistently doing that on the weekend, I like having my weekend, so I'm going to say no. But but Josh knows he has an open invite anytime he wants to be on the podcast. So I think we're all in agreement. The more Josh, the better.
Yep. And you also have to remember, Paul, and as much as we all love talking football, we all love talking Bucs, there's only so much like quality content that you can create, right? Like we have 4 jam-packed hours a week, sometimes a little bit more, right? We go over a good amount. So you say 4 to 5 jam-packed hours. If you have to start stretching that, you're doing 6 or 7 podcasts a week. The quality of those hours may go down, and we are very dedicated to bringing you quality Bucs content. Just going back real quick before that comment, I know you spoke very well about Bryce Hall. I'll kind of preview some information that'll be a part of my forthcoming Zion article. To be determined when it will drop. Scott Reynolds, I promise it will drop at some point. If you look at the games where he played corner, not safety, and played the majority of the snaps. So this is weeks 2, 3, 4, then 9 through 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Zion had a catch rate against of less than 54%. And he averaged the yards allowed on him being targeted over those 11 games was less than 1 yard per coverage rep, which is a solid number. You see guys who have like that number. To give you an idea, Jamel Dean averaged right around that number for the entirety of his first 4 years in the NFL, and then got a $14 million contract off of it, right? So that's a really good efficiency number. And what was really kind of encouraging about that is if you look at his last 2 games, week 16 against Jacksonville, week 17 against New Orleans at home, he was targeted 13 times over those 2 games, allowed only 8 catches for 71 yards. That was a yards per coverage rep of 0.81, which now you're starting to get into elite territory. So those are some of the things that have me encouraged. The tape kind of backs it up. He's not perfect by any means. He's got to stop allowing easy inside releases. I know he said on the podcast that he loves playing press. He's definitely better in man or in zone than he is in press right now. But there's a lot to like within this defense. He plays thirds really well.
Yeah, I think there's a great opportunity for Zion McCollum. Because let's remember, he's going into his 3rd year. So he technically only has 2 more seasons with the Bucs. But if he balls out this year, and we've talked about a lot how the Jamel Dean situation, who knows if he's going to be back next season, this could be Zion's team as far as the cornerbacks go in a year from now. And he could be getting that big contract that we kind of talked about in years past when Carlton got paid and then Jamel Dean got paid. Zion, with a great year this season, is definitely setting himself up for the potential to make a nice payday and, of course, establish himself as a good corner, solid corner in this league. And obviously, getting hands on the football will go a long way with that as well. One more from Paul, a.k.a. Florida Dreamhouse, that says, I am not waiting until football season to hear you two. Quit being a slacker, LOL. Hey, I appreciate all the fandom, Paul, for real. You are great. I'm not against sporadic weekend episodes if certain things happen with whoever's going to be on from pewterreport.com. And also, we can't announce it yet, but stay tuned because you may be in the running for some bonus Pewter Report content on our YouTube channel. We're not ready to make that announcement yet, but that's a little teaser for everybody. If you want more Pewter Report on YouTube specifically, you may just be getting it. So I'll leave that for you, Paul, Florida Dream House. And Brian S. says, Bryce Hall has only played 150 snaps the past 2 years combined. Zion played 785 last year alone. I thought Hall saw the field for the Jets more than that. Those are D. Delaney numbers. Yeah, I mean, once Sauce Gardner got drafted, there really wasn't room for Bryce Hall. Now, in 2021, Bryce Hall started all 17 games, so he does have starting experience.
He was also injured in 22, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
He missed a good amount of time due to injury.
He only played in 5 games last year. Yep. In 2022.
Yeah, and then last year he got 2 starts where he played solidly in those 2 starts because I remember I watched the tape on those. So I have one for you, Matt.
Yeah.
Something that I'm interested to see with minicamp. There's been a lot mentioned about Chris Godwin is going to be moving from outside Z receiver back to the slot, the F.
Yeah.
Where he was for the entirety of Byron left, which is tenure with the Bucs. I'm interested to see how that affects where other receivers line up, right? So Trey Palmer was kind of, if I remember correctly, he was rotating last year. He was backup to Mike Evans. He would play the slot, and then he was also technically the backup to Mike Evans as the X. What does that mean for him in 2024? Are they going to try and put him outside in the Z and he's going to compete with Jalen McMillan there?
Yeah.
McMillan played most of his college career in the slot. His first year, I want to say he did line up outside. I think the Bucs see him as an outside receiver. You've got all these moving pieces. I think the only 2 things that are really for certain is Mike Evans is going to continue to be the X.
Yeah.
Chris Godwin's now going to be the F. But what does this mean for these other guys? Are they going to cross-train at different receiver positions? And how often are they going to see each of the time at each of those roles?
No, it's a great question. And it's one that I asked Jalen McMillan specifically about his comfort level of playing outside because he played so much in the slot at Washington. And he said that he played outside at Washington as well. Obviously not like last season when they made their national championship run before losing to Michigan. But he said he feels very comfortable playing on the outside. He has been asked to do it and has played there at other times for Washington in previous seasons. So that kind of answers one side of it. But also because there's going to be more 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end situations. Yeah, I think almost the bigger question, if we're, and you should never assume, but if we're predicting that it's going to be Mike, Chris, and Jalen McMillan as the 3rd wide receiver, then it's like, okay, well, is Trey Palmer still going to be behind Mike Evans? Or is, as you said, is he going to compete with Jalen McMillan? I think what's best for the team is if he competes with Jalen McMillan and they say, may the best man win for that other outside position. Now, you mentioned a word that the Bucs use a lot when it comes to their defense, but I think it also applies to their offense, cross-training. We hear it all the time with, we're going to cross-train this guy at the slot, but he's also going to play safety. You're probably going to see that with Tyke Smith right now. We cross-train both of our linebackers to play the Mo and the Mike or the Mo and the Will and all those positions. I think Trey Palmer is going to be asked to do a lot of different things, maybe even kick return this year, now that Devin Tompkins is not going to be back with the Buccaneers, obviously. I think Trey Palmer is not going to be a gadget guy, but it's almost like having that swing tackle where it's like he could start if someone else gets hurt, or we could just have him as our extra tight end. Trey Palmer, I think, is going to be behind Mike Evans if something happens to Mike, but he's also going to back up Jalen McMillan, maybe line up in the slot as well, too. So I think cross-training is really going to be big. And then the other part of this that plays a role in all of it. Rakim Jarrett, obviously one of them, and Sterling Shepard, the newest Buccaneer as well. I think we'll have something to say about that. We're going to talk about Sterling Shepard in just a moment, but we talked a little bit about injuries with Bryce Hall getting injured, Zion McCollum, who's been healthy. Sterling Shepard is coming off of an ACL injury from 2 seasons ago. So last year was really the one where, he got his legs under him. If you have an injury or want some medical attention in the Tampa area, there's no better place to go to than the Bay Area Modern Medical Center. Are you tired of feeling like just another number in the waiting room? At Bay Area Modern Medical Center in Tampa, we believe you deserve the personalized care that puts your health and well-being first. Meet Christopher Lugo. With over 24 years of medical expertise, he's a primary care provider, and he's dedicated to your overall health. We had him on the Pewter Report podcast a couple of weeks ago. But that's not all. Christopher specializes in weight loss, anti-aging, and hormone replacement therapy, including testosterone treatments for both men and women. So men, listen up. Testosterone treatments can be affordable. Don't let age slow you down. Reclaim your vitality and get back to feeling great. Turn back the clock with a consultation at Bay Area Modern Medical Center today. So visit BAMMC.com to explore their range of testosterone and weight loss treatments. Here's the difference. Christopher practices concierge medicine. That means no more waiting rooms, no rushing through appointments. Imagine a doctor who takes the time to go over your extensive lab results, that discusses your diet and exercise plan, and provides personalized vitamin and supplement recommendations to optimize your health. Same-day appointments are also available for your convenience. So they are catering to you. But don't just take our word for it. Pewter Report's Scott Reynolds is also a very satisfied patient, and he cannot recommend Bay Area Modern Medical Center enough. Ready to experience healthcare that revolves around you? Book your appointment today at BAMMC.com or call them at 844-789-2266. That's BAMMC.com, and their number is 844-789-2266. Bay Area Modern Medical Center, where your health is our priority. All right, so the big signing, while they did also sign Chris Thompson from Seattle, Sterling Shepard, I think, was a little more newsworthy. Signing with the Buccaneers, he reunites with Baker Mayfield, where they were teammates at Oklahoma in 2015. They won a Big 12 championship together. Sterling Shepard had over 1,000 yards, I believe 11 touchdowns, something like that, and a number of catches. Had a solid career with the Giants, but then in 2022, he tore his ACL, and then last season wasn't too much of a factor with the Buccaneers. With the Giants. Now he comes to the Buccaneers. Josh, your thoughts about the signing and what type of impact Sterling Shepard could have on the Bucs?
Yeah, I mean, he's a slot only kind of guy. He's under 6 foot. He's a former 4.4 speedster when he was coming out of college, but smaller. He's more of a typical slot role, not so much the slot role that the Bucs envision under Liam Cohen, and they kind of use the big slot with Chris Godwin. But for his career, I want to say he's over 60% of his snaps have come from the slot. A little bit more shifty than fast these days. Short to intermediate receiver. I really see him mostly as depth. I don't think that he's going to rate extremely high on the depth chart, but as we've seen in years past, you think of Brashad Perryman against the Bills a few years ago. You think of David Moore last year against the Eagles in the the wild card round. Those veteran depth guys provide a high floor. And then when you get some injuries and they get on the field, they know where to be, they know what to do, and they can oftentimes make that big play that helps save a game, save a season, if you will. So I think that it's a great signing for depth. I think it brings a little extra veteran presence to a wide receiver room that past the top 2 is very, very young, very inexperienced, not a lot of production, NFL production to them. I don't think he's going to challenge Palmer or McMillan for that wide receiver 3 or 4 spot, but he's definitely going to challenge Rakim Jarrett for receiver 5. Honestly, what I think may end up happening is he becomes that practice squad guy that you feel really good about, dresses a few games, and then late in the season, if there's an injury, he gets signed to the roster, and you're really glad that you have him on the team.
Yeah, I think it's very low risk and high reward for the Buccaneers. Yep. He's not going to challenge Mike or Chris for a starting job, not even Jalen McMillan. But to your point, and I said this the other day on the show, I look at the Bucs wide receiver room. It's like there's Mike and Chris, and then there's the Bucs wide receivers room. So when you take out Mike and Chris, there wasn't that veteran presence, experience that they've had with other guys in the past, whether it was Russell Gage or Rashad Perryman, to your point. But now you bring in Sterling Shepard, who has chemistry with Baker Mayfield going back to Oklahoma. At worst, it makes Baker Mayfield happy. And I think it's always a good idea to, 1, keep your quarterback happy, and 2, keep the guy that you just paid $100 million to keep him happy as well. But 2, that veteran presence, maybe last season, while he was not productive at all with the Giants were a dumpster fire last year. They had a backup for primarily most of the season. And he was also coming back from that ACL injury. And we saw Chris Godwin, who still had a great season coming back from his own knee injury. Not everybody recovers that way. So maybe there's still a little bit something in the tank for Sterling Shepard. And that veteran guy coming in at their best, in their prime in the NFL, Sterling Shepard was head and shoulders above, Rashad Perryman when he was at his best, or even, Russell Gage to a degree. So, I think depth-wise, this is a great signing. If he doesn't have it, if there's nothing left in the tank, the Bucs can move on from him easily. I know the Bucs love Rakim Jarrett. I think he's fine, but I'm not in love with him the way that the Bucs are. He wasn't really that productive up until that injury that put him on IR. Obviously, you're only going to have so many opportunities. But, overall, I think it's nice to see that reunion. If he has anything there, then it's good for depth. If something happens where he does have to play for 2 or 3 games, you don't hate it as much as you would with maybe some other veterans in there. So, it's a thumbs up for me. I think it's a good move.
Yep, absolutely. And it's a perfect signing for this time of year.
Yeah. Fully agree with that. And the time of year that it is right now is mandatory minicamp time. So tomorrow's show, along with Wednesdays and Thursdays, it's going to be all about the analysis, the breakdown, everything that we saw from Bucs mandatory minicamp. Tomorrow is day 1, so we'll have that show at 4:00 Eastern to recap day 1, and then we'll do the same thing on Wednesday and Thursday for day 2 and day 3. So a lot of great Bucs content coming up. We'll see who we talk to after practice as well. We'll see what's good with Tristan Wirfs. Is he going to be participating, or will he be there and just enjoying and watching? We'll see Vita Vea, how slimmed down he is.
Slim down Vita, let's go.
Yeah, Randy Gregory has not been at OTA, so we'll get our first looks at Randy Gregory as well. Obviously, Sterling Shepard now with the Bucs. So a lot of exciting.
Maybe an appearance by a surprise Pewter reporter who just had some time open up in his schedule.
There could be. So another teaser for everybody there as well. That would be very, very cool. It'd also be very, very cool if everybody, if you're not already doing so, please follow us on our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Pewter Report. And then our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. We got the podcast. We got various clips, opinion videos, things from practice and press conferences, live reactions as well. And, of course, the game day stream when the season is going. So please follow us on all of our social media and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a comment below on this video as we wrap up the show. So that is going to do it for us this afternoon. For Josh Capo, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.